I've seen the fire in our nation's eyes when anger prowls for prey. I've heard good people draw their lines and call it holy rage. But the cross was never raised to bless the stones we throw. And if mercy leaves the house, there's something wrong down in the soul. Words ain't bullets, but they can hit the same. And once a heart turns cold enough, it forgets what grace is for. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No, no room for hate. No room for hate. You can wave a flag above it, you can quote a verse or two, you can dress it up like justice till it almost sounds like truth. But outrage ain't righteous when it changes with the side. And you can't love your neighbor treating them like they're downrange. We're all image bearers, breath of God and dust. And you don't heal a broken land by teaching it not to trust. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No room for hate. No room for hate. Drag it to the cross, lay it in the ground. Let the blood of Jesus turn the whole thing around. Truth can still be spoken, courage still can stand, but rage don't get to rule the soul of a faithful man. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place.
Let revival start where the anger breaks.
Where the anger breaks.
Let healing rise up where the hurt gives way.
No room for hate.
No room for hate.
No, no room for hate.
No room for hate.
Not in Jesus' name. Oh, not in this house. Not in this heart. Not in His name. No room for hate.
Remember when entertainment was actually entertaining? When comedy was about being funny? Movies were about telling great stories, and you didn't need a political lecture every time you hit play. Great entertainment still exists, it's just getting harder to find. Even the biggest streaming platforms leave audiences disappointed. That's why there's Studio TST, pure entertainment, real comedy, independent films, bold creators, movies, comedy, music, and more, and the home of fearless sketch comedy. That show tonight, entertainment the way you want it. Funny, creative, unapologetic, and agenda-free. Studio TST, the future of entertainment starts here. Join Studio TST today for just $5 a month.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Celebrity designer Jeff Lewis is back with Hollywood House Lift.
I'm excited to be working with new clients.
I'm not getting rid of that.
I hope I never see you both again.
An all-new season.
Those have to go. That has to go.
From oh, wow,
It's been an actual nightmare.
to oh, wow.
This is such an upgrade.
With celebrities like Josh Duhamel, Christina Ricci, and Gina Rodriguez.
Dazzle me, Jeff.
It looks like Chuck E. Cheese.
Stream an all-new season of Hollywood House Lift with Jeff Lewis, now streaming on Freevee.
In uncertain times, we could use someone to lean on. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma will stand by you with plan options to fit your budget. If you've recently lost your job, had a baby, or moved, you can still get the healthcare coverage you and your family need. Financial help may be available for those who qualify. Call 855-452-BLUE or visit hereforyouok.com to see if you're eligible to enroll. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, a division of Healthcare Service Corporation, a mutual legal reserve company.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Got a vendetta. Coffee tastes like bad decisions I ain't made yet. Boss man talking about we got her, and that means me, brother. Afraid I got a terminal case of the I don't want us. Mind checked out, heart ain't in the building. That second hand's crawling like it hates my guts. The man treating rich like it's a sin. Even God took a beat. so suck it. Thank God it's Friday, punching out loud. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill's still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and a bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday, 'cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, work and wait. It ain't owning me. So raise them up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday. That's all I know. HR in the break room sounding like a preacher, talking about culture, smiles, and being team players. Clipboard dreams on the fluorescent light, selling hours of my life just to make it to Friday night. Got dirt on my jeans, and grease on my hands, clock more over than quality plans. But when that bell rings, it's a holy sound. Feel like chains hit the floor when it echoes around. I ain't lazy, I just work my fill. If rest is a sin, guess I always will. Thank God it's Friday, punching out loud. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill's still waiting, but tonight don't care. Cold beer sermon and a bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday, 'cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, work and wait. It ain't on me. So raise them up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday. That's all I know. Boss can have Monday. God on Sunday. But Friday night's mine. I ain't giving it away. I earned this beer. I earned this pay. Earned every sip I'm about to take. Thank God it's Friday, punching out alive. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill's still waiting, but tonight I don't care.
And welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the It's Finally Friday edition of the Rick Robinson Show, live right here on KLRNradio.com. Starting at a different time. Monday, I wasn't feeling well, but I still wanted to do the show because I've been taking a lot of extra days off. So I pushed it back by an hour, and the numbers were much better than they had been when I moved to a later time slot because I've been having insomnia again. So I was doing an earlier show, and lots of people were showing up. But I moved things back by like an hour, I think, and then the numbers died. So then I moved things back by another hour because I didn't feel good on Monday, but still wanted to do the show anyway because there was too much to talk about to not do it, and the numbers were really good. And then Wednesday I was gonna do that, and then wound up doing a 3-hour show, and guess it worked out pretty well that way because I accidentally started at the old time. So I ended it would be the new end time. Anyway, so as far as the weekend news roundup, Amy's in Egypt and Brad is off doing family stuff. So unless BZ chimes back, we may not actually do that one today. Because this show is pretty news heavy today anyway. I try to do more fun stuff on Fridays, but then things started dropping. And so we're going to have to talk about those things. But welcome into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Rick Robinson. And if there is a final kind of a push through for the show today, it's the fine print is the story. So welcome in, my friends. Again, it's Friday, finally, for those of you working for the weekend. You are nearly there. And when I did the whole 9 to 5 Monday through Friday thing, it was kind of weird because psychologically I got to where I enjoyed Friday more than anything else, because by 5 p.m. on Saturday, it was like, holy crap, it's already Sunday again tomorrow. And then, oh my God, it's Monday again the next day. So I don't know if any of you, because see, that's the thing. I never used to have that kind of schedule, and I always wanted that kind of schedule, and then I got it, and I was like, this still has lots of drawbacks. Like I can't get certain things done without having to burn vacation days that I didn't necessarily want to burn to do things other than go on vacation. So, yeah, but here's the thing, especially in today's news cycle, sometimes the truth of this is in the second paragraph, and sometimes it's buried even further. Sometimes it's in the footnote section. Sometimes it's in the part they hope you skip. And every once in a while, the thing they want you staring at is not the actual story at all. It's the distraction. We start with, we were going to start with the May jobs reports numbers, and then I realized that as good of a story as that is, there's another one that I have to start with that kind of pisses me off. And that is the fact that we finally, for about 5 seconds, looked like we might have had some Senate movement on the Save America Act. But no. So Susan Collins of Maine, who is the one who is going to be going up against her Orstenführer soon, Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, who's retiring and is now not hiding the fact that he's basically a tool, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, surprising no one, Tom Tillis, surprising no one. So the vote was on the motion to waive the Budget Act with respect to Graham Amendment number 5779, related to the SAVE Act of 2026, otherwise known as the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, as part of the S.2 Secure America Act fiscal year 2026 reconciliation fight. It failed with a final vote of 48-50, with Bennett and Ernst not voting at all. The Senate Daily Press record lists the GOP no votes as Collins, McConnell, Murkowski, and Tillis. So it's not just those four. The two that chose not to vote at all, if they had voted yes, would have pushed it to the vice president, and it would have been a tiebreaker. So Fox also wrote up the same thing, and that matches the list and says these four Republicans joined Democrats to block the late attempt to attach the Save America Act to the GOP's immigration enforcement and funding plan. So here's the thing. When Republicans tried to attach the SAVE Act to the reconciliation package, it failed. Again, final tally was 48-50. The four Republican no votes again, I'm going to say their names again because they deserve to be lambasted in the public square, as far as I'm concerned. Collins, McConnell, Murkowski, and Tillis. Ernst didn't vote at all, which matters too because she was not listed as a no, but the failure to vote, especially when there was another person who apparently failed to vote, which stopped it from getting to the 50-50, which means we still could have had nice things again in America, ladies and gentlemen, but they don't want us to have that. And I've said this for forever. The problem that I keep running headlong into, and there are people that I know that have been doing this for less time than me and some that have been doing this for more time than me, that have completely stopped doing shows about politics because they have figured out that we're basically, the top is the same. The folks in D.C., regardless of their letter behind their name, for the most part, especially the ones that have lived there forever and have become part of the establishment class in D.C., want you and I to die in a fire. And I don't say that lightly. They don't care about me and you. They don't care about anything to do with this country. They only care about their ability to hang on to power. And as a matter of fact, they are some of the ones who are behind the scenes orchestrating things to make sure that things that they could easily fix don't get fixed. If you needed any more proof that we need the Save America Act and the whole, prove that you're a citizenship to vote here, have a valid ID thing to prove that to be able to vote here, you really don't need to look any further than commie failure. For the first time in a long time, right now we have Republicans that are in the, I keep saying Republicans, but I guess the guy running for mayor is Spencer Pratt. He's an independent, but the Democrats keep painting him with the Republican brush. I'm going to call him the common sense guy because he's like, hey, we need to get the homeless off the streets. We need moms to be able to take their kids to play in the parks again without worrying about navigating minefields of poo and needles. And we need to do something about these fires so that people like me can actually have homes again. So I'm going to start calling him the common sense guy, because to me, that makes sense. I don't care what the letter behind his name is. I've never really been, for the most part, one of those letter behind the name kind of people. It's been more about the people that make sense. And the problem that we're running into now, and this is, we're going to get into this later, but the Democratic Party is totally imploding right now. And there are cracks forming everywhere, but they're not talking about them. But it's the first time that I know of since I have been doing this, and I've been doing this for a very long time, that the fights between the Democrats are actually being brought out into the public. The Republicans do this all the time. We are the kings and queens of circular firing squads. The Democrats, they're having the same problem right now. But again, I wanted to start there, even though that wasn't where I planned on starting the show, because I was like, I kind of forgot to lump that in there. And we really need to talk about that, because that could have fixed a lot of things. But 4 Republican senators voted no, and 2 said, yeah, I don't really care. So just pointing that out. All right. So, but we do have, so I wanted to start there because we do have some good news, because the May jobs report just dropped. And the jobs not only beat expectations, they blew them out of the water. And we have that right about here. As soon as I can find the image. Okay, I think it's that one. All right. So jobs report dropped for May, plus 172,000 jobs. They were expecting around 85,000, so that's nearly double. Actually, that's over double. So 70,000 in leisure and hospitality, which again, summertime, you expect those numbers to go up. Local government jobs went up by 55,000. Healthcare jobs went up by 35,000. Financial activities jobs went down by 22,000. But again, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Every time one of these reports dropped under the Biden administration, they gave us these numbers that sounded really, really solid. And then the next month, the revised numbers would come out and they would go down each time. Now, for the last several cycles that these numbers have dropped, they have gone up on the back end. I need you to let that sink in, because that's how strong our economy actually is right now. And the thing that nobody's talking about, especially if they are a left-leaning news outlet or somebody that wants to prop up the Democratic propaganda BS, is almost all of these jobs are actually going to people that are here legally or that were born here, instead of the large onset of low-skill jobs that were being taken over by illegals. Oh, yes, they have corrected them before, but since you're calling me out on my show, you should probably go look at the numbers, because the numbers for March and April actually went up. So did the numbers for January and February. Troll. Anyway, that's enough of that stuff. But yeah, so anyway, there's the job report numbers. You can take that information and do whatever you want to do with it. Of course, if you're this moron in the chat, then you're going to think that nothing is ever any good because Donald Trump is the devil or whatever. I don't really care. But again, I mean, it's not all good news. I mean, again, the jobs beat expectations. Unemployment held steady, which was expected. And prior months were actually revised up. That is good news. But like every economic report, the numbers need to be read, not worshipped, which is not what I was trying to do. Because, it's not all good news. There are still sectors of the job markets that are dropping, and we need to address those and figure out how to fix them, and if we can. But then we're going to move into the Southern Poverty Law Center stuff. One of the loudest self-appointed moral referees in American public life, now facing federal allegations that raise some very ugly questions about the anti-hate industry. Now, we also will get into Chinese robots, because they're already entering the American market. Congressional hearings that somehow turned into theater and circus regarding shoes. The Graham Platner vetting disaster. again, I'm going to say, if I had known how quickly this was going to blow up for the Democrats, but then again, this is knives out from the Democrats, folks, I probably wouldn't have been yelling so loudly about him, because now I'm afraid they're going to try to pull a switch at the last minute to try to see if they can still hang on to that seat. Then we've got a creepy bioethics debate over meat allergies. And then, mercifully, a real American science story out of Ohio where nuclear power may be working its way back onto the table, boys and girls. And yes, we will end with Amazon apparently finding a way to own Stargate and still fail to lock in the seventh chevron. So today we're reading past the Chiron jobs, watchdogs, robot dogs, nuclear power, meat allergies, congressional theater, campaign meltdowns, and Stargate. The title says it all, folks, because the fine print is the story. So let's start again with the hard news item of the day. The May jobs report is out, and the number is strong. The economy added a total of 172,000 jobs in May. The unemployment rate held steady at 4.3%. March and April were revised upward by a combined total of 93,000 additional jobs. That is not nothing, and it's not a bad report. That's not a number you can wave away because it doesn't fit your preferred political narrative. You all know me well enough to know I am not going to pretend good economic news is bad economic news just because politics has turned into team sports. If the number is good, the number is good. If payrolls beat expectations, then payrolls beat expectations. If unemployment holds steady, then unemployment holds steady. This report is good news for the White House, bad news for the doomer and gloomer crowd, and complicated news for anyone waiting on the Fed to make money cheaper. That is the first layer. According to Town Hall, it was framed as a hot jobs report, and on the basic political point, that is fair. It gives the Trump administration something real to point to. It gives Republicans a stronger economic argument than they would have had if the number had come in weak, and it undercuts the people who were hoping for an easy, the economy's falling apart headline. But the next layer matters too. The gains were not spread evenly across the economy. A lot of the growth came from leisure and hospitality, which is normal for this time of year. Local government was also strong. Healthcare added jobs. Social assistance continued to trend up. Meanwhile, financial activities actually lost jobs. Air transportation lost jobs. But again, that has a lot to do with that whole Spirit thing. Several major sectors were basically flat. So the clean read is this. Yes, the report is strong, but ask where the jobs are, ask what kind of jobs they are, and whether the economy is broadening or clustering. It doesn't make the report bad. It makes this a real report. There's also the wage piece. Average hourly earnings went up from 0.3% for the month and 3.4% for year over year. Decent numbers. Not explosive, but not terrible either. But wage growth also feeds the Fed conversation because a stronger labor market can make markets nervous. That is the strange world we live in today. A good jobs report can make investors sad because they think it means the Fed may not cut rates after all, or if they do, maybe not as quickly as they want. President Trump's argument is basically this: growth does not automatically mean inflation, and in principle, he's right. Growth by itself is not inflation. Productivity matters, supply matters, energy costs matter, regulations matter, tax policies matter. You can have an economy that grows because production expands, not just because demand overheats. But markets do not always think like normal people. Markets hear strong jobs report and they immediately start gaming out what the Fed will do next. For ordinary Americans, the story may be more people working. For Wall Street, the story may be, well, there goes that rate cut. All right, so we've got a couple of clips in regard to this. If I still have them, I had to reset, so now I got to go figure out what I have and what I don't have. So hang on. I think we've still got this.
I think this is a large portion based on the tax changes that we made last summer that continue to be able to kick in across small, large, medium-sized farms and ranches, all kinds of businesses that are experiencing this kind of growth. Let me give you one example that I worked on directly with the president, and that was full expensing. When we allowed businesses to say, if you're buying a new piece of equipment, a new tractor, a new whatever it may be, to be able to expense that out in the same year, it incentivized a lot of businesses to add new equipment that adds new jobs, that continues to accelerate the economy. So we're seeing direct results of actual changes that we made last summer. and the Working Families Tax Cut Act still kicking into this year's economy. I think it's going to continue to go.
You know, the Main Street versus Wall Street is something that people always talk about. Like, okay, all of the investment and everything on Wall Street may be doing great, but people are feeling the high gas prices. What would you say about where we are with inflation as well?
Yeah, people are paying attention to high gas prices. That's one that hits them directly. It also affects everything in the economy. It was a piece of furniture, a piece of clothing, groceries. They're all affected by gas and diesel prices because you got to have transportation in the process of getting them out to you. So people definitely feel it. It's the number one thing that I hear in Oklahoma when I talk to people. Hey, they want gas prices to come down. People understand that we're in a conflict with Iran right now that's been 47 years in the making. And the president's trying to be able to resolve this for every generation, our generation and the future generations, and stop having Iran play with the world market all the time as they have done over and over and over again. So as soon as the things are resolved with Iran, which the president's actively doing right now, then we'll have gas prices come down pretty quick.
All right, let's get to this. The House Judiciary Committee.
All right, so we'll come back to that later. There's another segment of this that I wanted to use. Hang on while I look for the other bit that I had that I thought was shared properly, but I'm not sure now. Hang on. Oh, yeah, it was. Sorry, it just looked weird. I had a technical issue at the beginning of the show, so I had to reset my internet real quick. So some of my stuff doesn't look right anymore, but it looks like it's still actually held on this time. So here we go.
Out the Made Jobs report. 172,000. Is there any doubt that this anecdotal evidence about a good labor market has been very correct? That is a really strong number. And last month, well, we had a revision from 115,000 to 179,000, which means the 2-month revision has got to be over 90,000. That is a good number. Even manufacturing posted a 7,000 job gain. So how strong is 172,000? That would be the best number since 185,000 in March. These are solid numbers. If we look at what's going on with average hourly earnings come in at 3/10 as expected. If data is out, the Made Jobs report. 100.
All right, so again, and now a lot of you may be asking, well, if the jobs reports are doing so well, why is the stock market panicking today? That's because, ladies and gentlemen, for the last several cycles, and this happened some even under Donald Trump's first term, there were more government jobs that were being created than there were private sector jobs. So no matter how they did a lot of things to prop up the numbers that a lot of us didn't really understand or we weren't paying close enough attention to. That's not happening this time because the federal government isn't growing, it's actually shrinking. And that's a good thing. So the market's responding to this because they understand that lately what's been happening is we have been taking jobs from one bucket, shoving them into another, which actually winds up costing me and you more because it takes more tax money to support these jobs. So it actually adds to inflation. If the jobs trends stay the way they are now, inflation should be able to stay about the same because we're not robbing from one bucket just to shove jobs into another bucket that are actually publicly funded jobs that take tax money from me and you, which again is a very good thing despite what the trolls in my chat want to say today. So there's that. All right. So this is where I want to be fair about all of this. If you're in the White House today, take the win. You can say, because they did, jobs beat expectations. You say unemployment had held steady, which is what they expected to be able to say. You say prior months were revised up. You say the economy has momentum. That is politics 101, and it's also basically true. But if you're doing honest analysis, you also say, hold on, this does not erase long-term unemployment. This does not erase people working part-time because they cannot find full-time work. And it does not fully capture the people who are outside traditional payroll, building, freelancing, contracting, driving, selling, consulting, or doing whatever they have to do to keep the lights on. And that's the next part of the story, because payroll doesn't always tell the entire part of the story. As a matter of fact, I'm not technically on anybody's payroll right now. I freelance write for a bunch of organizations and I run my own company. So I'm not showing up in the payroll taxes for the most part because of how my business is currently structured. The jobs report tells us who got hired on payroll. It does not fully tell us who gave up waiting for payroll and started freelancing, consulting, driving, selling, decided to build a company of their own, or trying to turn survival into self-employment. Now, I want to be careful because the official definition matters. When BLS says long-term unemployment, they mean people unemployed for 27 weeks or more. Officially, if you're working for profit or pay in your own business, you should generally be counted as employed or self-employed, not unemployed. However, that's not how that always works. And that's why they started dropping some of these long-term unemployed folks from the unemployment rolls back in the 1980s, because there was a job creation boom under Reagan. I submit the same thing is starting to happen again under Trump, because it happened the first time. So there's a good chance it's probably happening again. But again, I'm not making the sloppy claim that everyone counted as long-term unemployed is secretly working. That's not the argument I'm trying to make. The argument is that payroll jobs are not the entire human story of the labor market, and a lot of times those other little gray areas of the labor market get left behind. There are people who are technically self-employed but still trying to rebuild a real income. There are people who went from a paycheck to contracting. There are people who went from full-time employment to gig work. There are people who started a business not because they had a brilliant Shark Tank moment, but because the regular job market stopped working for them. They don't fit neatly into the political talking points because real life is not a neat data table, as much as I sometimes wish it was. That does not undermine the jobs report. It just means we should not pretend the report explains everything. Some people are not sitting around waiting to be rescued, because we know, and especially if you're on my side of the aisle, we know that there's really no rescue coming. That's kind of the whole point. So some people are trying to build their own lane instead. They are piecing things together. They're forming companies. They're doing contract work. They're trying to turn a bad job market experience into their own form of independence. This is where Republicans should be smart. Don't just say jobs good, Democrats bad, Trump good, moving on. Be Tarzan, Eugene. That's too thin. The stronger argument is the report is good and the full labor story is bigger than payroll. The American worker is not just an employee. Sometimes the American worker is a founder, a contractor, a driver, a consultant, a broadcaster, a seller, a builder, or a family trying to create stability after the corporate ladder broke underneath them. That argument connects because people know their lives are more complicated than a headline. Just saying. So when the hate watchers feed the machine, and that's the next part we're going to be getting into. So speaking of the part beneath the label, let's talk about one of the loudest self-appointed moral referees in America. Remember these Southern Poverty Law Center folks, the ones that we were told forever were just trying to look out for the little guy and trying to fight racism. But what if I told you they weren't just tracking hate? What if I told you that based on recent indictments, it appears they may have actually been subsidizing parts of it? So let me say this clearly at the top of this. This is an allegation story. This is an indictment story. This is not a conviction story. We don't need to overstate it because the allegation is serious enough on its own. The proper wording is federal prosecutors allege, the indictment claims, the DOJ says, the SPLC and others involved will have their defense and the legal process has to play out. But if even a portion of what prosecutors allege is true, this becomes a major institutional credibility story. And this is where we're going to take our first break. We'll come back on the other side with more on the SPLC story that is unraveling right in front of our eyes if we choose to pay attention. My name is Rick Robinson. This is my show. And again, on Fridays, we normally do first tributes to law enforcement dispatchers, folks like that. So that's what this one is. That's what this break is going to be about. So if you're one of those, this is your moment to take a bow. Again, my name is Rick Robinson. This is my show. I'll be right back.
comes in, somebody answers, day or night.
We will hold another hearing Tuesday on the Southern Poverty Law Center.
All right,
Quote,
bear with me. I'm having a
manufacturing the
technical
hate
issue here.
It claims to fight.
Trying to clean it up.
That's after some stunning new allegations against that group. The Department of
I think that was causing a bandwidth issue. So let's try to go back to the break now.
When the call comes in, somebody answers, day or night, they're already moving. Calm voices, fast hands, doing the work while the rest of the world freezes. From a headset to a truck, from a badge to a door, they don't stop to count the cost. They step in when it matters. It's not about being seen, it's about being there. They're holding the line when the lines go dead, standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line through the fire, the flood. When everything falls, they don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. Before the sirens fade, before the scene is clear, someone's already making sense of the moment. Keeping people alive, keeping things from getting worse. Some run toward danger, some stay behind and hold there. They're holding the line when the lines go dead, standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line through the fire, the flood. When everything falls, they don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. This is service, this is sacrifice, this is how lives are saved. No spotlight, no applause, just showing up again and again. They're holding the line when the world goes dark. When everything's breaking, they hold their ground. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line. So we raise our voices for the ones who stand. Every voice, every badge, every helping hand. They don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. Always standing in the gap for us all.
Man, we got gremlins all over the place today, but we're still doing this damn thing. All right, so anyway, we are here. We are live. And, yeah. No, they're just college-level indoctrinated folks, Michael. It happens. It happens. Every time we get any traction on YouTube, I get a bunch of people that always think they're smarter than me doing this stuff. But then they don't have shows of their own, so they probably should go do that. Anyway, so before we went to break, we were talking about the whole SPLC thing because there's more. You know, this started a while ago when we first found out that, you know, the whole Charlottesville thing was actually there was somebody from one of these groups that was actually in the SPLC group chat about the Charlottesville thing. So guess what we found out now, according to the DOJ? Apparently, donor money was used to buy torches, torch fuel, and hoods. So again, if even a portion of what prosecutors are alleging is true, this becomes a major institutional credibility story. The Southern Poverty Law Center built a public brand around fighting hate, exposing extremism, and then telling donors it was combating racism and bigotry. It has been cited by politicians, media outlets, corporations, and activists as though it were some neutral moral scoreboard. If the SPLC put you on the map, that label could follow you around for years. Now, the allegation is that the donor money may have been used to pay people tied to extremist groups, including folks like the Ku Klux Klan, and helped pay for Klan-related activities. The reporting describes payments to informants or people inside these groups, and the newer claims include reimbursement or support connection to things like robes, recruitment, and cross-burning related expenses. Again, these are all allegations, but my word, what an allegation. Because the public story was, we're fighting hate. The part underneath, according to prosecutors, may be, we were paying people to remain inside the ecosystem we are fundraising against. And that's another part of the story. They actually had one of these so-called paid informants that was reaching back out to them and saying, hey, these people are scary and I don't want to be anywhere near them. And then they're like, no, you got to stay put. Here's some more money. But this goes back to something that I've been saying now for a very, very long time. 2009, 2010 should have been the death of racism in America. Now, we had already had a lot. We'd already had integration. We'd had the Civil Rights Act. We'd had all kinds of different things showing that we weren't the same as we were pre-Civil War and even post-Civil War. However, what happened was folks like Barack Obama, who made their entire bones by community organizing, folks like Jesse Jackson and all the other ones, suddenly realized that, hey, we can't let this stuff go, or we're going to be irrelevant. This is the same problem we run into with politicians, by the way. You know, how I was ranting at the beginning of the show, how we can't get the Save America Act passed, and you just had 4 Republicans vote no and 2 sit it out just to make sure that it couldn't come to a tiebreaker. Gee, I wonder why that was. Let me explain it to you again, because I don't care whether you think I'm an idiot. I don't care whether you're a Democrat. I don't care whether you're a Republican. Let me speak to you as plainly as I can. If the government actually did its job, it would render itself at most obsolescent. And they don't want that. They have worked their entire lives to get to where they are, to have access to the rooms, the lobbyists, the deep pockets, and all those things. And if they actually made things work the way they were supposed to work, we wouldn't need them anymore. And that's part of the reason why I started doing this in the first place, was because I was reminded when I was playing a video game, an Xbox game, way, way, way back in the day, when no matter which path you chose, because it was one of those ones where you could, decide which side you were going to be on. And no matter which way you went, eventually you found out the guy at the top was the same. He was just funding 2 different groups. And basically you picked up whatever banner that most aligned with you, and then you ran off and you fought one another to get to, and that's exactly where we are with politics today. And nobody wants to talk about it. What happened today in the Senate? I think it was today. It was either today or late last night. I don't remember which. But that reinforces that exact position. Because again, they know we don't trust the elections anymore, but they don't want you trusting the elections anymore. Because if you could trust them, then you wouldn't be able to rail against the side that you don't agree with for cheating, if you could trust them. And both sides do it. The difference is when my side does it, we get branded as traitors and terrorists. When your side does it, it's just political discourse. I have a problem with that. But it goes even further than that because these people have been funding and pushing the very hate they claim to be fighting against, all to continue to be able to fundraise. This is the same situation, just the other side of it. You have politicians who say, send us back to Washington, send me back to Washington, and I will fix this. And then you send them back to Washington, and then they do what a lot of them do, and they say, well, we tried, but here's a link. Send me some more money so I can keep fighting for you. And a lot of the folks, especially on my side of the aisle, are tired of that game. That's why a lot of folks that have been there for a while, even some that said that they were going to term limit themselves, but never did, have been sent home. Because we're recognizing the grift more than we used to. We're realizing that sending you money isn't enough if you're not going to do what you tell us you're going to do. And 9 times out of 10, ladies and gentlemen, all of this is political theater, and you've seen it again. The House has voted, 4 or 5 times now to try to pass the SAVE Act? The Senate usually wouldn't even take it up. Then today or yesterday, they tried to add it to reconciliation, and then they gave a clean no vote. Again, 2 Republicans abstained altogether. 4 didn't vote at all. Or 4 voted no. That's why this stuff matters. They are using political theater to keep you pissed off at each other on both sides. And we're falling for it over and over and over again. That's why both sides hate Donald Trump. He's exposing them for who they are. That's why they hate him. That's why they call him the devil. That's why they've tried to hang every albatross they can find around his neck. And I'm not even necessarily saying he doesn't deserve some of those albatrosses. But when you've got the guy coming in trying to flip over the tables, a lot of times people don't like that. A lot of times people don't like that. And they get mad about it because he's upsetting their apple carts. He's changing how their system works. He has cleaned so much of the crap out of Washington that we don't even know about yet. And that's why they hate him so much. He did it a lot on his first term. The thing about it is, politics is nothing but a board game if you don't pay attention to it. And they have known now for decades that they could keep us from paying attention to it. And then COVID happened. And then a lot of folks overplayed their hands when it came to COVID. And then parents started being woken up to what their children were being taught in schools. And then parents started realizing, hey, they're not even letting us go to church. Hey, they're not even letting us go outside when, according to most doctors, sunlight and fresh air is one of the best things you could have done for COVID because it allows you to space if you need to, and sunlight helps kill anything. Sunlight is a really good disinfectant. Nobody really talks about that part, but it's the truth. But again, if your entire business model depends on finding hate and the country's not producing enough hate to justify your fundraising pitch, what happens? Do you accurately report that reality? Do you tell donors things are improving, or do you create incentives that keep the machine alive? That's the question here. There is an industry in America built around panic. There is a fundraising machine built around making ordinary people believe the country is always one step away from 1930s Germany. There is political power in convincing people that your enemies are not simply wrong, not simply misguided, and not simply political opponents, but dangerous extremists who must be socially, financially, and legally destroyed. And if one of the institutions feeding that panic is now accused of financially supporting part of the ecosystem it claimed to be fighting, that is not just hypocrisy at its finest. That is a collapse of any form of moral authority. The label on the box said anti-hate. The fine print may say conflict of interest. The label said, hey, we're a watchdog. The buried clause may say supplier. The label said moral authority. The paperwork may say fundraising machine. And once again, we're not saying conviction, we're saying allegation. But if prosecutors are putting this in federal filings, then it deserves some serious discussion. All right, so we're going to be closing out hour 1 in just a moment. Now let's move from institutional trust to national security, because this one, up until 5 seconds ago, would have sounded a lot like science fiction until you realize it's already in the market. Chinese robots, they're already here. Humanoid robots, quadruped robots, robot dogs, industrial robots. They are no longer future tense. They are not just concept videos on the internet anymore. Some of them are being sold, tested, demonstrated, and integrated into real world environments. And Congress, who's always a day late and a dollar short, is finally starting to respond. House China Committee Chairman John Mulvaney introduced the GUARD Act, the Guarding the U.S. Against Adversarial Robotics Dominance Act. The basic idea is that national security agencies would review humanoid and quadruped robots produced by China and other foreign adversaries. If their products are deemed a threat, they could be blocked from the American market. That sounds dramatic until you remember we already went through a version of this with Huawei and ZTE. We already had the debate about whether cheap foreign hardware can create long-term national security risks, and the resounding answer was actually yes, it can. We already learned that communications networks are not just consumer products. They are infrastructure. They are intelligence services. They are access points. Now, apply that logic to machines with legs, cameras, sensors, and microphones, mapping tools, software updates, and possibly remote access. The public pitch says innovation. The hidden cost may be surveillance risk, supply chain risk, data risk, and disruption risks. And here's the part that gets missed in the cute robot dog videos. This is not just about whether the robot can do a backflip. It is about who built it, who subsidized it, what data it collects, where that data goes, what software controls it, and whether it can be updated, hijacked, disabled, or repurposed later. Beijing has made advanced robotics a national priority. Chinese firms can be state-backed, state-subsidized, and tied into larger military civil fusion strategy. Because here's the thing that a lot of folks didn't seem to understand until recently. If you are a company in China, you already are wholly owned by the CCP. And they can do whatever they want. That means the line between commercial robotics and military capacity can get blurry, and it can get blurry really fast. If a Chinese restaurant is, if a Chinese robot is in an American warehouse, what does it see? If it's in a hospital, what does it map out? If it's in a school, what does it record? If it's in a factory, what proprietary processes does it observe? If it is in a critical infrastructure environment, what does it learn? If the software is compromised, what exactly happens? That's not paranoia. That's the world we live in today. And to be fair, this is not only about China. It's about whether the United States has the industrial capacity, manufacturing base, software ecosystem, and regulatory wisdom to lead in robotics rather than importing the future from a hostile power because the price tag looked good. Cheap can get very expensive if the paperwork includes dependency. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is hour one. A jobs report hotter than expected, a moral referee facing ugly federal allegations, and now robot dogs with a China problem. The story they sell says progress. The buried warning says maybe read the user agreement before the thing with legs starts mapping your building. When we come back, we go from serious headlines to serious people who apparently forgot how hearings work. Rubio went before Foreign Affairs. Bessent was before the Ways and Means. And Congress reminds us that sometimes the Chiron is not the whole story, because sometimes the Chiron is just the distraction. This is the Rick Robinson Show. We're going to be right back. Don't go too far.
I've seen the fire in our nation's eyes when anger prowls for prey. I've heard good people draw their lines and call it holy rage, but the cross was never raised to bless the stones we throw. something wrong down in the soul. Words ain't bullets, but they can hit the same. And once a heart turns cold enough, it forgets what grace is for. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No room for hate. No room for hate. You can wave a flag above it. You can quote a verse or two. You can dress it up like justice till it almost sounds like truth. But outrage ain't righteous when it changes with the side. And you can't love your neighbor, treating them like they're downrange. We're all image bearers, breath of God and dust. And you don't heal a broken land by teaching it not to trust. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No room for hate. No room for hate. Drag it to the cross, lay it in the ground. Let the blood of Jesus turn the whole thing around. Truth can still be spoken, courage still can stand, but rage don't get to rule the soul of a faithful man. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place.
Let revival start where the anger breaks.
Where the anger breaks.
Let healing rise up where the hurt gives way.
No room for hate.
No room for hate.
No room for hate.
No room for hate.
Not in Jesus' name. Oh, not in this house. Not in this heart. Not in His name. No room for hate.
Remember when entertainment was actually entertaining? When comedy was about being funny, movies were about telling great stories, and you didn't need a political lecture every time you hit play. Great entertainment still exists, it's just getting harder to find. Even the biggest streaming platforms leave audiences disappointed. That's why there's Studio TST, pure entertainment, real comedy, independent films, bold creators, movies, comedy, music, and more, and the home of fearless sketch comedy. That show tonight, entertainment the way you want it. Funny, creative, unapologetic, and agenda-free. Studio TST, the future of entertainment starts here. Join Studio TST today for just $5 a month.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRN Radio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at klrnradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRN Radio.
In uncertain times, we could use someone to lean on. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma will stand by you with plan options to fit your budget. If you've recently lost your job, had a baby, or moved, you can still get the healthcare coverage you and your family need. Financial help may be available for those who qualify. Call 855-452-BLUE or visit hereforyouok.com to see if you're eligible to enroll. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, a division of Healthcare Service Corporation, a mutual legal reserve company.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Alarm clock barking like it's got a vendetta. Coffee tastes like bad decisions I ain't made yet. Boss man talking about we got her, and that means me, brother. Afraid I got a terminal case of the I don't want us. Mind checked out, heart ain't in the building. That second hand's crawling like it hates my guts. The man treating rich like it's a sin. Even God took a beat. So suck it. Thank God it's Friday, punching out loud. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and a barstool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday, 'cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, working way. It ain't owning me. So raise them up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday.
And welcome into hour 2 of the It's Finally Friday edition of the Rick Robinson Show, live right here on KLRNradio.com, live on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, on YouTube, and available on all your favorite podcast catchers later if you can't catch it live. All right, so somebody teed one up for me. I don't usually feed the trolls, but this one got teed up pretty well. When I was making the comments about 1930s Germany, he's like shoving children into concentration camps, denying them proper food, water, and medical attention. You mean like that? Do you have any proof of anything you just took time to waste my brain cells and make me read? Because you don't. I guarantee you don't. Because guess what? The ICE centers beat most state-level detention centers for criminals. So I know. And here's the thing. Look, I don't like the kids are being caught up in this stuff any more than you do. But the simple fact of the matter is, we do things all the time with criminals and kids that I don't really agree with. How many kids wind up in foster care because their last parent that could possibly take care of them did something stupid and wound up going to jail? It's not that much of a different scenario, whether you like it or not. And yeah, Steven, no cat girl robots. I don't know. Anyway, so welcome back into the Rick Robinson Show. Hour one was about the first read versus the reality underneath it, the jobs report, SPLC allegations, Chinese robotics, all stories where the first sentence doesn't really tell you everything that you might need to know. Hour two is where that theme mutates just a little bit. Sometimes the public-facing story is incomplete. Sometimes it is a distraction. Sometimes hearings become clip factories, which make jobs like the one I have easier. Sometimes authentic outsider becomes very target-rich opposition research, and sometimes science fiction becomes a bioethics paper. And sometimes, thank the Lord, science actually does something useful and splits atoms on schedule. So let's start with Congress doing what Congress does best, reminding us why the approval rating is where it is at. So if you were paying attention to any of these hearings that were happening this week, they were a lot like The View, but with nameplates. So Marco Rubio went before the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and if you're a normal person, you might assume a foreign affairs hearing with the Secretary of State would involve actual foreign affairs, things like war, diplomacy, alliances, China, Iran, Russia, trade routes, embassies, national security, hostages, intelligence sharing, the work Congress is actually supposed to do. I know, radical stuff. I know. Instead, parts of the hearing turned into a cable news clip audition. Ted Lieu wanted to press Rubio on whether Donald Trump falls asleep in meetings, and we've got that clip here in just a second. Sarah Jacobs wanted to talk about the 2020 election and Rubio's shoes. Yes, you heard me right. Shoes in a foreign affairs hearing. I'm not saying no one can ever ask a political question. I'm not pretending hearings have ever been pure seminar rooms full of philosopher statesmen, but there's a difference between pointed oversight and turning a committee hearing into The View with nameplates and microphones. All right, so first thing we have here, and it'll take me a second to get it queued up, is I believe it's the Trump Rubio sleeping thing, I think. Yeah, that's it. All right, so there it is. Let me get it pulled back up. Sorry, I was, again, having some issues earlier, so it'll take me a second to get everything back the way it's supposed to be. I think it was this one. All right, so yeah, here's the thing. Here you go.
I've never seen him fall asleep. On the contrary, the guy doesn't sleep, which is a big problem because he calls me at 2 in the morning. He calls me at 5 in the morning. And, I like to sleep a little bit, maybe not 12 hours, but at least 6. So he works. The other day he was at the Oval Office until 12:30 p.m. 12:30 a.m. I don't know what you're talking about.
Secretary Rubio, I'm going to show you in a moment a video that shows you just lied to Congress.
Oh, okay.
So this is a video of a cabinet meeting literally from last month where Donald Trump is sleeping while you're talking. Please show this video.
A coalition of countries that line up behind the peace deal, behind the border peace, and it's still, every day is a challenge, but it's been driven personally by the president. It's the reason why we're involved in this whole Ukraine-Russia conflict. That's not our war. It's not the president's war. This war started, it never would have happened if you've been president. But this war is going on, and the president is trying to end it.
You are literally talking about issues of war and peace, and Donald Trump is sleeping right next to you.
No, he's not.
If Donald Trump cannot stay awake at these important meetings where the cameras are rolling,
Stephen, I don't know if that helped, but that's as much as I can turn it up.
There. So I'm going to ask you, have you been at classified meetings where Donald Trump has fallen asleep or had trouble staying awake?
I've never been at any meeting where, and the things you're showing me now, he was not falling asleep. And
so,
I think
so
it's
you're
outrageous
lying
that I'm before
again.
The Foreign Affairs
You're
Committee
lying
of the United States
consistently
House of Representatives
to
asking
Congress.
questions about sleep.
All right, so hang on. I'm going to put that part on the screen if I can find it.
It's the reason why we're involved in this whole Ukraine-Russia conflict.
Okay. Now, it's not very big because it's actually him showing it from the screen there. But I know the point that he's talking about. And Donald Trump closed his eyes for, I think, approximately 2.5 seconds. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever done any type of TV broadcast work. Those lights in that room are hot as hell. So yeah, they make this they made this big deal, and that's why Ted Lieu did what he did, because somebody took a screenshot of Donald Trump with his eyes closed and took it all over social media and said, "Oh look, Donald Trump's falling asleep in cabinet meetings." Except that's not what happened, because they're wanting to try to recreate what they allowed to happen with Joe Biden. And I, for one, think every Democrat, including Lady McBiden, should be up on elder abuse charges for what they did to that man. And I don't even like him. But you can tell lately she don't like him either. So there was a book promotion deal that she went on, and he showed up and, of course, interrupted and was like, "Who do you love the most?" And she looks at Whoopi and says, "Well, Whoopi." So then you couldn't really see it from the camera angle, but I'm pretty sure he probably gave her the sulky face. So she's like, "Wait, I love you the most. Is that the answer that you wanted, Joe?" But then the part that they cut off that you can find if you go find the full clip, where she's actually getting visibly upset with him, is like, "Why are you doing this right now? This is my time. Why are you even here? Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada." Look, we have had another time in history when a president was really, really sick and the wife got to hold the reins and nobody knew. That's pretty much what happened with the last guy. But now they're trying to say that's what's happening with this guy, when if you pay attention, even the Democrats who were on his press gaggle complain every time they have to go overseas with him, because they're used to having 6, 7, 8 hours where they can get sleep, get caught up on paperwork, whatever the case may be. But instead, they keep being bombarded with him after he gets maybe an hour and a half of sleep. You know how I know? Because that's how I am. That's how I've always been. It drove my parents absolutely nuts, because once I got to a certain age, I pretty much got to the point where I would sleep 2 or 3 hours a night. They would wake up and find me watching TV or doing all kinds of other random things 3, 4, 5 in the morning. They'd be like, "What's the matter with you?" I'm like, "I can't sleep." I've always been that way. But they're trying to recreate what happened with Joe Biden. And what happened with Joe Biden was completely their fault, because they knew he was broken. That's why they started with the idea of he was going to be a transitional candidate. And I tell you right now today, I'm pretty sure that's probably why most of the 18 to 30 crowd voted for him, because all they heard was trans candidate. I'll be here all week. Anyway. Okay. But yeah, so that was one. So that was Rubio. But it didn't stop there. I don't think I actually found a clip about the shoes. I looked, but I didn't find it. So again, Rubio's me talking, take two. Rubio's answer on Trump sleeping was basically, "I've never seen that. In fact, the man calls me at 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. You may not like Trump. You may think Rubio is spinning. Fine. Ask a follow-up. But the moment you start accusing the witness of lying to Congress over a clip where you think the president's eyes look closed, we're no longer doing substantive foreign policy oversight." Which is the other thing. What does that have to do with foreign policy? So then Sarah Jacobs brought up the 2020 election. Rubio's answer is that as Secretary of State, he does not participate in domestic political issues. Whether you like that answer or not, that is the traditional lane. The Secretary of State is supposed to represent the country abroad, not relegate campaign fights in a committee room because somebody wants a viral clip. And then somehow we got to shoes. I know you guys have seen the clip, which is another reason why, when it took me more than a few minutes to find it, I decided not to look for it. The Foreign Affairs Committee is supposed to be where serious people ask serious questions about a dangerous world. Instead, they turned it into, again, The View with nameplates and microphones. And it wasn't just Rubio. Because, again, there was a whole fight about his shoes. And then at one point, it was like she was trying to soften the tone, but trash him at the same time. Because she was like, "Your shoes look very nice today, by the way, Mr. Secretary." He's like, "How can you see them? Because they're way down here." and just kind of smirked. And then he's like, so this is what we're going to talk about? In the Foreign Affairs Committee, we're going to be talking about shoes. Is this a circus? Because it kind of feels like a circus. But that wasn't all of it either. So but wait, there's more. Because then we had, actually I lied. I do have the clip about the shoes. So we're going to run that. Ha! I thought I had it. I just convinced myself I didn't. So anyway, here's the exchange with the shoes, just so we can actually say that we've covered it. As soon as I get back to the right page. Thanks, BZ, but I realized I already had it. Good looking out, though, bro.
I have one last question for you. Mr. Secretary, who won the 2020 presidential election?
I'm not here to answer a question. We're talking about 2020. This is a Foreign Affairs Committee.
Okay, great. You can't answer the question, even though we all know that President Biden won.
Question because the Secretary of State, I do not participate in domestic political issues.
This is not about domestic political issues. This is about our democracy.
You're asking me to opine, just like I don't do campaign rallies.
It seems like
I don't do because as Secretary of State, we're not supposed to. That's been the long tradition of the department, and you should know that if you've been on this committee for any period of time.
Mr. Secretary, it seems like you have an issue admitting facts. You can't say that the president lost the 2020 election, just like you won't admit President Trump is losing this reckless war of choice, and just like you couldn't admit that the shoes the president bought you were too big. You clearly don't know what winning means, and not because the facts are unclear to you, it's because telling the truth would cost you your job, and the American...
Stop right there for a second, because this is a case of your staffer writing what they thought was going to be a zinger and you being forced to read it and then not realizing until after the words came out of your mouth how stupid you sounded. Also, I would like to point out that you almost said, this isn't about this is about you telling the truth. Yeah, funny how that keeps happening to the folks that like to say the things like my truth and your truth, and when there really is only truth and the truth and nothing but the truth. But yeah, anyway, okay, so back to the clip.
People are entitled to a Secretary of State who tells them the truth even when the president doesn't want to hear it. And my constituents, our service members, deserve better. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I don't know what shoes she's talking about. What is she talking about?
Representative Burchett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'd like to answer any of that.
Yeah, I don't know about the shoes. I mean, he gave me some Florsheim shoes. They're actually pretty good. They fit fine. I don't know what she's talking about. And maybe that's what she's referring to.
Your shoes look very nice today, Mr. Secretary.
How can you see them? They're way down here. We're talking about shoes. Are you guys kidding me? I mean, is this the Foreign Affairs Committee or is this like a circus? What is this?
I think it's a circus.
So if I were a Democrat, if I were a Republican campaign consultant, I would find a way to work that last bit into pretty much every ad I could put together for this cycle. Because you've got Democrats yelling about shoes while they're supposedly complaining about how bad the rest of the economy is, how bad everything is here, how bad Trump is. They're lambasting the Secretary of State for his footwear. Because they have nothing else. They have nothing else. They can't even soft pedal the stuff happening in commie failure anymore, because now even NBC News is so. Why does it take 4, 5, 6 weeks for us to find out who wins the mayoral election? I can kind of understand the federal elections, but a mayor's race? It's because they figured out how to cheat. It's not that hard. You just have to be willing to face reality. This is not about a fair and free election. This is about being able to engineer the results you want. And before you tell me that kind of stuff doesn't happen, they are doing that already in a lot of different things, because they have figured out that and we'll get into this later, but they have figured out that there's a certain tick that can make you allergic to meat. Somebody actually, and we'll get into this, somebody put out a paper about how and why it would be a good idea to introduce that to the world's population so that we could reduce consumption of meat. So if you don't think that these people, because they think they're on the right side of everything, do everything they can to engineer the results that they want, then I have a bridge I would like to sell you. Just reach out to me after the show. Just saying. So again, that was the shoes. But again, remember, we're not done, because that's just Rubio. Besant was dragged as well. I think I have that somewhere. There it is. All right, so let's get that one on the screen properly. And this is yet another hearing where somebody decided to make everything about them, not their actual job. But I don't know why I keep being surprised when things like that happen, but I still kind of am, not going to lie. All right, here we go.
Also found that a DOGE staffer sent an unencrypted file containing USAID payment information and individuals' names to external DOGE personnel at the General Services Administration. Soon after it was reported, no disciplinary action was taken, despite the employee's failure to protect federal and non-federal employees' sensitive personal data and comply with security requirements. So again, Mr. Secretary, when employees who violate IT security rules are not held accountable, what does that message send to agents? Why don't you hold someone accountable?
Why are you bringing up USAID with me?
Because a DOGE staffer, GAO, found that a DOGE had payment information. Payment information.
USAID, I do not oversee. I wear many hats in this administration. Not one.
And this is still, this is a file containing payment information. Are you not in charge also of the Treasury?
That has USAID. That has nothing to do with us.
But payment information has nothing to do with it.
Again, it was not sourced at the Treasury. Why are you bringing this up with me?
So GAO provided 6 recommendations to address identified weaknesses, including ensuring staff agree to comply with IT.
So yeah, there you have yet another example of apparently a Congress critter not understanding where somebody's purview begins and ends. But I don't know why we're surprised. I don't know why it surprises me, but I have to admit it actually kind of did. But there you go. So yeah, so over in Ways and Means that we just kind of talked about, Scott Bessent got the same treatment. Treasury Secretary, budget and tax issues, economic policy, revenue, debt, inflation, gas taxes. If you want to ask it properly, that's the lane you should be in. But Democrats tried to drag him into questions outside his depth and outside of his department, including war definition games and USAID-related questions. At one point, Bessent basically has to remind them, I do not oversee USAID. Why are you asking me about USAID? If the Secretary Treasury is Treasury, maybe ask Treasury-related questions. If the Secretary is State, maybe ask foreign policy questions. I know it's a radical concept, but apparently Congress needs a refresher course in what they're actually supposed to be doing. So here's the broader problem with all of this. Oversight is important and hearings should matter. Congress should question executive officials aggressively. I want hard questions. I want witnesses challenged. I want secretaries forced to defend policy. That's the job. But clip chasing oversight is not oversight. It is performative and performance art. It stops being about getting answers and starts being about manufacturing moments. And in a dangerous world, that is not harmless. If China is moving, if Iran is active, if Russia is probing, if our economy is shifting, and if technology is changing faster than government can understand, then committee time is and should be precious. Use it. Don't waste it on nap clips and shoe jokes. Sometimes the story they want clipped is the distraction. So, speaking of distractions, we're going to take the break. When we come back, we got a whole mess of crap to talk about when it comes to der Oystenführer, otherwise known as Graham Platner. This is when we do the military tribute, so hang out. This one will run a bit long. We'll get through as much as we can before we call it quits, but stay tuned.
Before the oath was spoken out loud,
Before you stood apart from the crowd, there was a moment, quiet and clear, when you chose to stand while others stayed here. You raised your hand with a steady resolve, knowing some nights don't end when the mission's done. Not for glory, not for the pay, but for something worth more than walking away.
Only hold the line.
They carried the weight where the roads ran long, through dust and heat
When the days went on,
holding ground mile after mile, doing the work that rarely drew a smile. They stood their post when relief ran late, shoulders squared under the pull of fate.
not chasing headlines, not asking why, just staying put when others pass by. We stand and watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. Maybe
We stand watch over the deep. They kept their watch where the water turns black, miles from shore with no quick way back, measuring time by the rise and the fall, answering duty's unrelenting call. Through silent hours and endless seas, they stood their post in the cold night breeze, guarding the lanes the world depends on, so others slept and the light stayed on. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. Simplify Marine.
We go where we're sent. We go where we're sent.
They moved as one when the moment came, side by side through fire and rain. First to step where the ground was thin, not for the odds but for the ones beside them.
Trust was earned in the hard way through, every promise carried by the few. No turning back once the line was crossed.
They stood shoulder to shoulder as brothers,
Never counting the cost. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days.
one old spoken carried through,
Wherever duty calls us to.
Air Force,
The sky is our domain.
Air Force.
The sky is our domain.
They held their focus where seconds seem eternal, soaring between clouds and blue. Every movement measured and true, knowing what one clean moment could do.
They watch the whole while guarding the small. Every mission tied to a larger call. Calm under pressure, steady and clear, keeping the promise from far overhead.
Space Force,
We guard the dark without
they
faith,
keep their vigil
where silence reigns,
beyond the weather,
beyond the rain.
watching the paths that the world relies on, long before the warning lights come on.
Cloud, no banners, no clear view,
Just constant care in a canvas full of stars,
standing the watch through the endless night,
guarding the systems that keep us in light. While the watch is kept and the lines hold fast, there are lives still moving on the other side of that.
empty chairs and quiet phones, long goodbyes that don't feel done.
Names we carry but never say, folded flags and debts we pay. Every service, every scar reaches farther than They launch into storms when hope feels thin. Turning back isn't an option then. Hands reach out where the waters rise, pulling lives back from the edge of time. No headlines waiting when the call is done. Just breathing restored and another life won. Every rescue, every return, a quiet promise kept in the worst conditions. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One old spoken carry through wherever duty calls us to. For the ones who raised the right hand high, swore the oath and didn't ask us why. For the nights you stood where freedom cost, we remember, we honor, we won't forget the loss. From the ground to the sea to the open sky, to the guardians above where the silent stars fly. Every branch, every badge, every battle scar, because you stood, we live free. Lord, we know we stand here freely because others stood before us. We accept the weight of what was given and the cost that came with it. We promise to remember those who serve, those who stand watch still, and those who never came home.
Well, I didn't have that slider set quite right. Bad producer monkey, bad. Welcome back into final segment, Rick Robinson Show, finally Friday edition. We've still got a lot of stuff to get through, though. Hopefully we can get through it all. Because we're just now getting into one of the most important parts. So here's the thing. As someone who's more conservative, if I had known how quickly the Democrats were going to bring out knives, because let's face it, if New York Times is dropping a hit piece, that's not coming from our side. That's coming from theirs. Now, again, they tried to make it look like it wasn't really a hit piece, but the call's coming from inside the house. Some of these folks have seen these things coming down the pipe, and they've realized that there's a good chance he may not win. I will say that if hindsight 2020, if I had known how badly this was going to shape up for him and how quickly it would start imploding, I probably wouldn't have been piling on, but the damage has already been done, so we might as well take a long, slow, leisurely stroll through how all of this started, because this is all part of that Democratic public infighting thing that I've been telling you about. And if we have time, I have a clip from somebody else who's being very vocal about another big segment of the Democratic population all of a sudden. But first, let's talk about Graham Platner, because this is one of those stories where the first pitch was, hey, he's another authentic outsider. And then the receipts started coming in and it started turning into opposition research. At first, the Platner pitch was obvious. Veteran, working class vibe, anti-establishment, a candidate who was supposed to feel different from the usual polished consultant creation. And that is a powerful brand these days, especially if you can make it work. People are tired of fake. They're tired of packaged. They're tired of politicians who sound like they were assembled during a donor retreat. But authenticity is dangerous if the record of said authenticity is a little ugly. The coverage timeline is not one thing. That's the point. If this were one dumb comment from 15 years ago, you could have a conversation about growth, forgiveness, context, and whether people are allowed to change. I believe people are allowed to change. I've seen it happen firsthand. I want a country where people can grow up, repent, mature, and become better than whatever their worst moment or moments might have been. But this is not just one moment. This is a rolling tsunami of bad moments. You have deleted Reddit posts, sexual assault comments, race comments, anti-gay slurs the Nazi-linked tattoo controversy, disputes over what he knew and when he knew it, the military culture explanation that angered veterans, Hamas and Israel-related posts that have resurfaced, law enforcement comments, wounded veteran and military comments, the sexting while married story, and the then ex-girlfriend allegations and more questions about the tattoo. That's not just a bad day. That's a horrible, terrible, no good, very bad day. It's also a file cabinet worth of stuff that is now basically being drawn out into the light. Now, again, we have to keep the lane straight. Some of these are documented posts. Some of them are allegations. Some have been outright denied. Some he's actually apologized for. Some are framed by the campaign as growth, trauma, his undiagnosed PTSD and using alcohol to self-medicate, or private marital struggles. You do not need to flatten all of that into one line or into some sort of cartoon villain story. But politically, the question becomes unavoidable. Who vetted this moron? At some point, this stops being a youthful mistake story and becomes a campaign vetting story. The question is no longer whether Der Ostenführer said one stupid thing years ago. The question is how many red flags party leaders are willing to step over because they liked the packaging. Hey, when they see red flags, they think carnival. That is the broader lesson. The headline was authenticity. The fine print was opposition research and in Legion. And this is a warning for every political party, not just the Democrats. Do not fall in love with a candidate type so hard that you stop vetting the actual person. Do not let, hey, he looks like the kind of guy who can win, blind you to, has anyone read what he wrote? Don't mistake vibe for character. Don't mistake biography for judgment. Don't mistake a compelling story for a clean record. Because the other side will find it, the press will find it, the internet will find it, and sometimes your own more conservative wing of your own party will find it and eventually use it against you. And if you do not find it, and if you don't find it first, you deserve the pain you get when it lands at your feet. So that's Platner, but there's more because, and this is all, remember when I told you there's all kinds of political infighting going on and it's crazy out there right now. We've never really seen Democrats fighting openly so public. Yeah. So remember Hassan Piker? he's back in the news again. And he ain't happy. And he's kind of letting the mask slip off a bit. Remember that old adage, the enemy of my enemy is my friends? I think some Democrats are going to find out, one, that's not actually a Sun Tzu quote. It's attributed to him a lot. It's actually more of kind of a wartime proverb kind of thing. However, it can also be very dangerous. And I think some of those Democratic chickens are starting to come home to roost because, yeah, check this out. Check this out.
Pittsburgh and Philly are far more progressive than San Fran and LA. Yeah. Yeah. You know what it is? I know what it is. Fucking car-reliant infrastructure. The more cars you have, the more chuddy the fucking city is. That's it. No public transit. No fucking people living close to one another. No close quarters to one another. No public transit at all. Massive wealth disparity. It's just fucking rich liberals who just want homo-fascism in the country. That's it. They want gay fascism. They want gay techno-fascism. Pittsburgh and Philly are far more homo-fascism in the country. That's the want homo-fascism in the country. Who just want homo-fascism and fucking rich liberals who just want homo-fascism in the country. That's it. They want gay fascism. They want gay techno-fascism.
All right, so I had a little bit of fun with it, but yeah. So funny thing is, guy with the first name Hassan suddenly coming out rather anti-gay, surprising absolutely no one if they knew what the hell they were talking about. But I do find it interesting because, again, these are not the type of fights that Democrats used to have in public. These were the things that were kept behind closed doors. These were the things that were discussed when nobody was paying attention to them so that they can hash them out on their own. But yeah, so now you've got this, Democrats pulling Ides of March on their Oystenführer because they've realized, hey, this guy may be an even worse candidate than we thought. And I say this again, if the New York Times ran this story, even though they did, because they had to thread the needle to get it done. That's why there was so much of, well, we're not so sure about this, we're not so sure about that, but this is what's been reported, because they have to thread the needle to be able to do things like this. But again, this means this guy's probably pretty much done. And we'll know for sure in a few days, because the primary hasn't even been held yet. And the governor who suspended her campaign for Senate actually hasn't even stopped it altogether. Plus, she's already on the ballot anyway. So, yeah, I guess we'll find out soon enough. But as someone who, as much as I hate Susan Collins and I wish we had another option in Maine because she pissed me off again today, Save America Act said no. Okay, so McConnell, not really surprised. Murkowski, and not really. Even Susan Collins, not so much. But still, again, you guys have fomented the distrust in all of our systems, and you have the ability to start restoring trust in them, and yet you keep choosing not to. It's almost like you're waiting for the left to either turn the dial all the way to nuke or for the right to flip the switch. I don't know which one it is, but it's like you're expecting one of those two things to happen here pretty quick. And I don't really like the fact that seems to be where all of you want this going, because we can't trust any of you anymore. You keep saying we're going to make things better for you, and then you don't. So remember how I kept saying, that all this stuff, where they cheat and they figure out how to engineer the outcomes that they want. Well, there's a reason I said that earlier in the show, because here is something completely different. If you're a Bullwinkle fan, you kind of probably know where that came from, but still somehow really connected to what we've been talking about today. You may have seen reports floating around that they have technology to make people allergic to meat. That sounds like one of those headlines where your first instinct is to ask, who let the conspiracy group write science policy? However, the truth is more interesting and honestly, in some ways, even a little more creepy. The meat allergy part is real. It is called alpha-gal syndrome. It can happen after certain tick bites. In the United States, the Lone Star tick is the one people usually talk about. A person gets bitten, their immune system reacts to this sugar molecule called alpha-gal, and then later they can have allergic reactions to red meat or other mammal-derived products. Sometimes it is mild, sometimes it can be serious, sometimes it can actually be life-threatening. So the allergy itself is real, the tick mechanism is real, and it actually exists. The next layer of this conversation is the creepy one. There have been academic discussions, including a bioethics paper about whether promoting or leveraging alpha-gal could reduce meat consumption. That doesn't mean there's proof of an active program being deployed against the public yet. Let's not say what we can't prove. But the fact that credentialed people are even discussing whether you could use biology to make people stop eating meat is enough to raise every ethical red flag in the building and across the country. This is one of those stories where the conspiracy sounding part is not the allergy, that part is real. The question is whether anyone is moving from nature does this to, hey, we should make nature do this on purpose. And if your climate or dietary agenda reaches the point where you are entertaining the idea of inducing allergies in human beings to change their behavior, congratulations, you have left public policy and entered the villain monologue territory. This is why people distrust experts, not because expertise is bad. Expertise is usually good. Science is good. Medicine is good. Research is good. But when credentialed people start treating human beings like variables in a moral engineering project, normal people recoil, and, well, let's face it, they should. You want to persuade people to eat differently? Make the argument. You want to promote alternative proteins? Fine. You want to debate agriculture, land use, health, climate, and food prices, and consumer choice? Great. Have the debate. But the second your idea becomes, what if we could biologically remove the choice? You have crossed a line. It's one you should be taken out and shot over. And after that creepy little science fiction detour, let's talk about science that actually makes me feel a little bit better about America today. So we are coming to the end of the show. However, a privately developed advanced reactor hit zero power critically at Idaho National Laboratory. The company is Antares Nuclear. The reactor is not producing electricity yet. That part matters. Don't let anyone oversell it. This is not a power plant turning on and lighting up a city. But in nuclear development, criticality is a real milestone. It means the reactor achieved a self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction in a controlled test environment. In this case, it was zero power criticality, which is a proof of concept and validation step. The company says it is targeting electricity production later, potentially in 2027, with military applications after that. So the first read, if you pay attention, says nuclear breakthrough. The details says zero power test today, possible electricity later, and real hurdles still ahead. But for once, the details do not ruin the story. They actually make it more serious. After all the circus acts, let's talk about something America did this week that actually matters. We split atoms, and we did it on schedule. That sounds dramatic, but I mean it. This is the kind of story we used to expect from America, not a hashtag, not a hearing stunt, not a consultant made narrative, engineers, fuel, steel, atoms, deadlines, and a working functional test. And it ties into military readiness too. The Defense Department and the Army have been interested in deployable microreactors because remote bases and installations need reliable power. If you are operating somewhere that cannot depend on a civilian grid, fuel convoys become a vulnerability. Energy becomes logistics. Logistics becomes security. A small reactor that can safely generate power in those conditions would be a game-changing size deal. Now, again, we're not pretending there are no problems, because there are. There are going to be regulatory hurdles because, there are. There are cost questions. There are fuel supply questions. There are safety questions. There are deployment questions. There are all the practical problems that come with nuclear energy. But unlike the AlphaGal story, which is really damn creepy, this is science aimed at expanding human capability, not manipulating human choice. This is the kind of technological ambition that says America can still build and do the hard things. For years, nuclear energy was treated like a bad word in polite political circles. We were told to chase wind, solar, batteries. We were given slogans and wishful thinking, and we put a lot of those slogans on bumper stickers while pretending baseload power was somehow optional. And it's not optional. If you want manufacturing, if you want data centers, you want AI centers, you want defense, hospitals, modern life, and an economy that can actually run, you need reliable power. And ladies and gentlemen, it's time nuclear came back to the table. So yes, boys, nuclear may in fact be back on the table, not because it's perfect, but because adulthood means choosing serious tools for serious problems. All right, so final segment, and we got to talk about this. Because thanks to Amazon MGM Studios, Chevron 7 did not lock after all. Now, they had greenlit a new show. It was going to be a bridge between old Stargate and new Stargate. It had original showrunners involved. They were writing the scripts, and they were going to tie everything canonically back to everything Stargate was before, and still hoping to bring new viewers in. However, apparently, Amazon looked at that and they said nah. So Amazon looked at Stargate, a franchise with built-in fan base, 17 seasons of lore, 354 live-action episodes, and people still yelling "indeed" at each other on the internet, and decided the problem was that only Stargate fans might, in fact, watch Stargate, which is absolutely brilliant. Not. Reports say the planned Stargate revival at Amazon is not moving forward, and what makes this so funny, in a very painful way, is that Stargate is exactly the kind of franchise Hollywood claims it wants. Recognizable IP, loyal fan base baked in, big mythology, military sci-fi, exploration, aliens, humor, ensemble cast potential, massive streaming library, room for new viewers and old viewers alike. It's all right there. And yet somehow they couldn't dial the gate. Now, I know every franchise fan thinks their favorite show is the easiest thing in the world to revive. Sometimes fans are wrong. Sometimes the business case is not there. That isn't one of these points, though, because here's the thing that a lot of folks aren't talking about. Amazon didn't kill the project. They just killed that version of it. They're actually in talks to potentially turn the entire franchise idea over to another showrunner. If I had to guess, I'd say right now they're probably fighting over whether they're going to bring Kripke to the table because he's done with The Boys, and oh, did that show take a turn? Oof. Kind of glad I never got into it now. And or Kurtzman, who helped drive Star Trek into the ground on his way out of Paramount. And they want to do the same thing. The Amazon execs, when they started seeing the writing rooms and the things that they were being sent over as far as story arcs, show Bibles, etc., they decided it wasn't going to be inclusive enough. They didn't feel like it would bring a younger audience to the table. Now, that is Hollywood speak for we don't care about you folks anymore because you're going to die soon. We need these kids that like purple and blue hair and transgender and all these things to feel like they're being represented, so they will continue watching after you die. It's pretty much what it means. They won't tell you that part out loud, but that's pretty much what it means. And that's when the idea started surfacing. They were actually not killing the project altogether, but they were simply going to find a way to make it more fake and gay, like Kathleen Kennedy did with Star Wars and like Kurtzman did with Star Trek, and J.J. Abrams a bit before him. However, I actually didn't mind the Kelvin timeline stuff because it got away from some of the, oh my God, you took all of Star Trek canon and threw it out the window. It's a different dimension, so it doesn't really matter to me anymore. It's not this one. Kind of like I finally sat down and watched a few episodes of Spider Noir the other day, and I posted about it, and this was about the same time that I read that they were killing Stargates, and I'm considering whether I'm going to keep Amazon Prime or not for reasons. But somebody pointed out that they really couldn't get into it because one, it was Nicolas Cage, which I get. Nicolas Cage never plays anybody other than Nicolas Cage. He's even leaned into it more than once. He played a movie about playing himself as himself. So at least he's one of the people that actually gets the joke. But then they were like, and his rather rotund secretary, which would have not existed in 1930s. I'm like, you're right. But again, alternate realities. So how do we know for sure how things were there? Anyway, maybe I'm too forgiving, and I say that all the time because I do watch shows like Days of Our Lives where there are Bible issues all the time. So, yeah. So the reported logic on this one is that they're afraid it would appeal mostly to Stargate fans that already exist, keeping in mind those fans kept 3 different versions of the show running for a combination of 17 years and 354 live-action episodes. And if you could caption that lightning in a bottle twice, why would you not? Because let's face it, this is exactly what happened with Star Trek. It was for a certain group, and then it died because the people that were older didn't like it, but then it came back when it hit syndication, and then it became something that parents started sharing with their children as they started having children, because they were younger when Star Trek came out. Now they're older, but it's in syndication. And hey, let me show you something. That's how my dad and I began fostering our mutual love for science fiction, was through TV shows like Star Trek. Now, I've seen all kinds of people that were on to me because I keep pointing out that, while there are rare exceptions, most everybody between the ages of 18 to 26 anymore doesn't even really watch TV. They don't even stream very much anymore. Not in the standard format. They usually come home from whatever they're doing. They cook, they microwave their dinner, or they DoorDash their dinner, and then they doom scroll until bedtime. So the idea that you're going to be able to recreate that with a younger audience isn't really going to exist, and it's never really going to manifest. And that's why Starfleet Academy fell apart. And let me be honest, I watched that show. There were parts of it that I liked. There were parts of it that I did not. I will probably still watch season 2 because it's Star Trek. And I do try to support Star Trek, even if I'm holding my nose and doing it, kind of like some of the Republicans I've had to vote for over the years. However, if the truth of it was that it was the base fan reactions that killed it, that's not true. Because especially if something's going poorly, there's no such thing as bad publicity. So when everything lit up and everybody that was trash talking it, sometimes me included, that should have brought and would have brought more people in, because what sells in the news? The negative stories, not the positive ones. So this is why that argument doesn't hold. If it bleeds, it leads is how we sell our news. Then the fact that people are trashing an IP or parts of an IP would bring more people in to look at the train wreck. But that didn't even really happen. Because people are tired. People are burned out. There were too many things about Discovery that didn't make sense. They even moved away from the initial concept of the Star Trek Discovery show itself. It was supposed to be 7 different seasons of each year. They spent time on a different front of the line ship. Discovery was the cross-theme title. It was never supposed to be about a specific ship. It was discovering parts of Star Trek that you may not have seen before, because it always pretty much focused on the Enterprise before. And still does. That would have been a hell of a concept, but they couldn't sell it. So then they stole some IP from a video game and said, "Hey, we're gonna make a ship that jumps through mushroom networks." Yeah, I played that game. Thanks for stealing it. Sure. Anyway, but so somewhere in an alternate dimension where dude's still kicking, General Hammond is asking who authorized this mission. And this is the Hollywood problem in one little story. They spend billions chasing built-in audiences and then get nervous when the built-in audience is too obvious. They buy legacy brands and then treat the fans like a liability. They want the name recognition without the obligation to understand why people love the thing in the first place. The public story was Stargate might be coming back. The reality was Amazon got cold feet before the first chevron was ever locked. So today we learned the jobs report has caveats, although they are kind of small. Congress has performance art, and science has creepy footnotes. Nuclear could be making a comeback. Chinese robot dogs need a background check, and Amazon can own MGM and still not figure out how to lock the first chevron. So that's the show today. The fine print is, of course, the story, and that's been the recurring theme for the day. The May jobs report was strong but not simple. The SPLC story is an allegation story, but a serious one. Chinese robotics is not just about cool gadgetry. It is about national security. Congressional hearings are not just about clips. They're supposed to be about oversight. Graham Platner is not just a candidate with a few bad headlines. He is a vetting lesson in front of everyone. Alpha-Gal is not just a weird meat allergy. It is a warning about bioethics without boundaries. Nuclear is not just a throwback. It may be part of America's serious energy future. And Stargate, well, Stargate deserved better. The first read is not always the whole story. Sometimes the truth is where the hypocrisy hides. Sometimes the details are where good news becomes more complicated. And every once in a while, the buried part is where you find out America still knows how to build something worth cheering for. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. I am Rick Robinson. This is my show, and this has been The Rick Robinson Show. Stay curious. Don't just focus on the Chiron. And for the love of all things holy, if you own Stargate, do something with it. We'll see you next time, ladies and gentlemen. Take care. Oh, you funny man, BZ. You funny man. Sorry, it's too many years of doing it in the studio.
From red dirt roads to the Capitol steps, Rick's calling truth, no time for regrets. Fire in his voice, facts in his hand, talking sense to the heart of this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show, where the truth rides high. No spin, no script, just an eagle in the sky. From D.C. to Tulsa, he's calling it out.
Say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.